With Julian Assange under house arrest, is that affecting your operations? And do you see WikiLeaks potentially an endangered species?
No, I don't think so. It has affected the organization, obviously. Not as much as though than the fact that we have been under severe attack by the major financial institutions in the world who decided to punish the organization, who have decided unilaterally that WikiLeaks is doing something illegal, and in an unprecedented manner have, for example, closed donation gateways to the organization. Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, Bank of America is not processing any transfers to us. And this is totally outrageous. It almost reminds you of the blacklist of the McCarthy era. And who are these organizations to decide? You can use your credit card to buy weapons, drugs, pornography, gamble on the internet. You can support the Ku Klux Klan. But Visa and MasterCard have decided that you can't use your plastic to give $10 to the organization, and a fundamental attack on the freedom of expression as well as an attack on the organization. I presume they are acting under pressure.
Are you considering taking legal action against these organizations?
Yes.
Could you expand on that at all?
There will be news about that in a few days, I would expect.
How do you see the future of WikiLeaks? What role will it play? Global whistleblower, respected media organisation, a respected member of the Fourth Estate, or an international outlaw organisation and pariah?
The journalistic community seeing the possibilities of WikiLeaks, and partly by copying the idea, for example. The ideal of a whistleblower website and anonymous Dropbox will be an integral part of the journalistic community. Whether and how prominent we will be there is basically unimportant. I'm very happy if we were able to disseminate the idea and the ideal, and it's going to be copied. We've already made a massive impact, already made history, I believe. It's always difficult to predict, especially in the future, as the man said. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
You said that criticism of the media, but I believe you need media as partners to get the message out more effectively. How is that relationship developing?
Prior to this big releases of the last 14 months, which started on April 5th last year with the release of the Apache attack helicopter video, WikiLeaks was doing its own analysis of material on a journalistic basis. This material that we've been focusing on is so vast in nature. I mean, we're talking about biggest leaks in history again and again. We needed the expertise and the manpower to work on it, and through some level of exclusivity, we were able to make the media organizations focus on putting this manpower to the job. It's hard to look into the future and see where WikiLeaks' future is, but I mean, I think we're very much a part of the media environment. We're a part of that media or the journalistic world. The world of journalism will develop closer to the idea, and we see that happening already. We already see that over 20 websites based on the same idea as WikiLeaks. Topic specific, we have financial leaks, environmental leaks, leaks out of European headquarters, Brussels leaks. The idea is catching on. I think it's very positive. And we also see the conventional media copying the idea. Al Jazeera has opened up this kind of Dropbox, and it already has produced spectacular stories, the Palestinian papers. The new thing that we see that WikiLeaks might have contributed to is the cooperation between media houses, which is very positive. We had to almost force the media to cooperate and share the research and stories in our previous project. These stories are getting bigger and bigger, and in order to cover them properly, you need to pull together.
How can you justify releasing, for example, US military cables that contain the address details of US collaborators in Afghanistan?
It is easily forgotten that we withheld 15,000 of the 19,000 logs because of consideration of possible harm to individuals. No individual that we know of has been harmed as the result of all the leaks that we put on in the 14 months with these high-profile leaks. So The talk of damage and harm has been overly hyped. The head of the U.S. military establishment gravely talk about the possibility that WikiLeaks might have blood on its hands when that same organization that he's leading is basically swimming in the blood of innocent civilians.
Some perceive that WikiLeaks is anti-US. Is this true? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, most of your leaks have been damaging towards the US government, where there's lots of other governments out there that are quite barbaric.
There is no focus on the US inside WikiLeaks, and there's no anti-Americanism. We are not picking our targets. We're not targeting anybody. We are passive recipients of information. It just so happens that those huge leaks that we have been focusing on the last months have been coming from the United States.
Are you hopeful that perhaps when people see the success of this, that maybe a Chinese dissident within the machine may leak for you, or in Iran or Saudi Arabia or any other country for that matter?
Yes, I mean, that's the hope, and either through WikiLeaks or through any other organization that this individual might trust. WikiLeaks
has this philosophy that transparency is paramount, yet it's a very shadowy organization itself. Is that not hypocritical?
What is shadowy about the organization? It is true that the identity of some people working for the organization have not been revealed. They are anonymous. That's partly because of the grave attacks and the hate speech that we've been getting, but the identity of a few people is known at our location. There's been talk about the lack of transparency with regard to the finances of WikiLeaks, which is absolute rubbish, because most of our donations and finance have been going through a German charity fund, and you can go online and see the total breakdown of donations and cost and reimbursement for last year, 2010, and you will get the same thing after 2011.
You are under a lot of attack at the moment from Western liberal governments. Do you not agree with the proposition that governments do need to protect information to conduct diplomacy?
Well, let me put it this way. I mean, can you point to any damaging effect on diplomatic relations that is a result of the leaks of the embassy cables that we already leaked? I mean, there's been a bit of an embarrassment that has been acknowledged by the State Department in talks to Reuters. But they've also said at the same time this has had no lasting damaging effect. In general, we can acknowledge that there is a need for some secrecy when it comes to national security, etc. But the level of secrecy is way too high, and the threshold has been raised throughout the last decade, especially after 9/11, to a very unhealthy level. There is the danger of the secrecy being abused, and behind that you have corruption, wrongdoing.
I believe before WikiLeaks you're a journalist in Iceland.
Yes.
And you helped to expose corruption within the Icelandic system that partly caused the banking system to collapse, and I think you used WikiLeaks as a source for that. Did you get a journalistic award for this?
No, not for this, no. What happened is that the entire banking sector in Iceland collapsed in a matter of 3 days in October 2008, and it was spectacular. These were international actors in the banking sector. And to give you a dimension of the scale, the total turnover of the Icelandic banks was 10 times the GDP of the country. So we went to a near economic meltdown in those days in October. The currency halved in value, people lost their houses, people took to the street in an unprecedented political demonstration. The House of Parliament was stoned. At the same time, journalists, me included, were being criticized for not having been able to point out the vulnerabilities of the banks and what was seen as corruption in the banks. While this was all going on, the months after this happened, WikiLeaks released information that they had received, information about the biggest of the failed Icelandic banks. It showed that the biggest borrower in the bank were the owners. with little, no, or collateral at all, or insufficient one. And that was the most sensational story after the banking crisis. And it seemed, and it showed in a transparent way why the banks collapsed. It seemed that they had been eaten up from the inside. The easiest way to rob a bank was to own one. 3 hours after I announced that we would change the next program to dedicate it to this big scoop, we were called, me and my team, into the manager's office and escorted over to the parking lot, and it was announced that the program was closed and we were all fired. As journalism has been in all over the world, we see less money put into investigative journalism. We see owners influencing and attempting to influence in a negative way the reporting.
I'll have to wait and see. Thanks very much for your time, Kristinn.
Thank you.